Good day everyone. Before we proceed to the presentation, we would like to introduce our group members. Levdia Nanee Eunick 269900, Meiline Anak Frederick 272466, Farah Hafizah Binti Abdul 270808, Jaquendra Wolie Wilfred 270794, and Siti Nabilah Binti Mohamad Noor 270980. Now let us proceed to the presentation. In this video presentation assignment, our group chose Malaysian Consumer Protection Act 1999. Firstly, I will talk about the definitions of the Act. Malaysian Consumer Protection Act 1999 is an act to provide for the protection of consumers, the establishments of the National Consumer Advisory Council and the Tribunal for Consumer Claims, and for matters connected therewith. However, this Act has been revised in line with the present condition and situations. Hence, the Act adopted in 1999 has been amended according to the times. The most recent change was made in August 9, 2019 and effectively in 2020. So the purpose of this Act is to protect consumers. The Act forbids misleading and deceptive conduct, false representation, and unfair practice that might lead to consumer mistakes. It also includes provisions for unfair contract, condition, and offences relating to this provision. And what is consumer is actually? So according to the Consumer Protection Act, a consumer is defined as someone who buys a product or receives a service for a fee. It excludes anybody who gets an item for resale or a good or service for commercial use. So in this presentation, our group will discuss more about the Consumer Protection Act 1999. So that's all from me, and I would like to pass it on to the next presenter.
Malaysian Consumer Protection Act 1999 is enforced in Malaysia on 15 November 1999. These acts have 14 parts and 150 sections that protected consumer through NCAC, which is National Consumer Advisory Council, and TCC, which is Tribunal for Consumer Claim. Under this act, the complaint from consumer can be properly addressed and assisted. And next, for this act, under section 3(1), consumer refer to the one who either obtain or uses products or service for any personnel or household purposely or resupply of product or service in trade, manufacturing, repairing, or treating process. And to ensure a fair trade that does not involve fraudulent practice for consumer. This act should apply in respect of all goods and services that are offered and supplied to one or more consumer in trade, including any trade transaction conducted through electronic means. This protection has been covered with a wide range of topics, and it's including but not necessarily limited to product liability, privacy right, unfair business practice, fraud, misrepresentation, and others consumer or business interaction. And this protection have because to prevent fraud and scam from service and sale contract. Eligible fraud will collector, regulation, pricing, utility turn-off, consolidation, personal loan that may be lead to bankruptcy to the company. These acts include any subsidiary legislation made under this act. That's all from me. I will pass to the next presenter.
Now, I will continue with the important point in the Act. There are so many important points in the Act that can be used by the consumer to get their right. As at 1 November 2019, Consumer Protection Act 1999 has 14 parts in roughly, but actually there has 17 parts in total and 194 sections in overall. Part is preliminary. There has 7 sections under Part 1, such as for short titles and commencement, applications, interpretations. For Part 2, misleading and deceptive conduct, false representations, and unfair practice has 11 sections, such as for interpretations and misleading conduct. For Part 3, safety of goods and service, has 7 sections, such as for safety standards, compliance with safety standards, general safety requirement for goods Part 3A, unfair contract terms, has 10 sections such as for interpretations for purpose of Part 3A and applications of Part 3A. For Part 3B, credit sale transactions has 17 sections such as applications of Part 3B, interpretations for purpose of Part 3B, and power of minister to prescribe goods. For Part 4, offense, defend, and remedies in relations Part 2 and 3 has 5 sections such as contraventions of Parts 2 and 3 to be an offense, offense caused by act or default of another person. For Part 5, guarantees in respect of supply of goods has 9 sections such as applications, implied guarantee as to title, implied guarantee as to acceptable quality, and for Part 6, right against supplier in respect of guarantees in the supply of goods has 11 sections, consumers' right of redress against suppliers, and exceptions in respect of implied guarantee as to acceptable quality. For Part 7, rights against manufacturer in respect of guarantees in the supply of goods, has 3 sections, consumer right of redress against manufacturer and exceptions to right of redress against manufacturer. For Part 8, guarantees in respect of supply of service, has 4 sections, implied guarantee as to reasonable cares and skill, implied guarantee as to fitness for particular purpose, implied guarantee as to time of completions, and implied guarantee as to price. For Part 9, rights against supplies in respect of guarantees in the supply of service, has 9 sections such as consumers' right of redress against suppliers and exceptions to right of redress against supplier in relations to service. For Part 10, product liabilitations, meaning of defect, liability for defective products, and extent of liability for loss and damage. For Part 11, the National Consumer Advisory Council has 12 sections such as establishments of the National Consumer Advisory Council, membership of council, temporary exercise of functions of chairmen, and vacations of office. For Part 11A, Committee on Advertisement has 4 sections, which is sections committees on advertisement and membership of Committee on Advertisement, Consumer Protections. For Part 12, the Tribunal for Consumer Claims has 39 sections such as establishments of the Tribunal for Consumer Claims and membership of Tribunal. In this part, 1 section being deleted, which is section 103. For Part 13, enforcement has 28 sections such as power of investigations, complaints to assistant controller, and authority cards. In this part, also 3 sections being deleted, which is section 128 until 130. For Part 14, general and miscellaneous has 11 sections such as receive power to order complaints and failure to comply with lawful order.
Advantages of the Malaysian Consumer Protection Act 1999. As mentioned earlier by my groupmate, the Act has been enacted in 2019. The first advantage of the new Consumer Protection Act 2019 is introducing the concept of unfair contract in Section 2 in bracket 46 that includes contracts that favor manufacturers or service providers over consumers, such as contracts requiring manifestly excessive security deposits to be given by a consumer for the performance of contractual obligation, and contracts imposing any penalty on the consumer for a breach of the contract, refusing to accept early repayment of debts on payment of applicable penalty, entitlement of a party to the contract to terminate such contract unilaterally without reasonable cause, permitting or having the effect of permitting one party to assign the contract to the detriment of the other party who is a consumer without his consent, and imposing on the consumer a penalty. The next advantage is the introduction of the concept of product liability, which encompasses the product manufacturer, product service provider, and product seller in the event of a compensation claim. This act defines product liability as the duty of a product seller or a product manufacturer of any service or product related to the product to compensate for any harm caused to a consumer by a defective product manufactured or sold, or by a deficiency in product-related services. However, the new Act includes some exceptions to liability claims, such as the product seller being exempt from liability if the product has been misused, altered, or modified. The new Consumer Protection Act 2019 also bring the advantage of territorial jurisdiction to the consumer by allowing complaints to be filed wherever the complainant lives or works for profit, as opposed to the previous act which only allowed complaints to be filed where the opposing party lived or did business. The amended provision would make it easier for consumers to seek redress of their grievance against businesses that may not have an office or branch in their geographic area. Furthermore, the advantage of the new act is it also includes a chapter on mediation as an alternative dispute resolution mechanism which can be used to resolve a consumer dispute more quickly without having to go through the commissions, which can resolve the dispute in whole or in part. Therefore, if the mediation is successful, the terms of the agreement will be reduced to the writing and presented to the commission, educating the dispute. If the consumer dispute is only partially resolved, the commission will record the settlement of the issues that have been resolved and will continue to hear the remaining issues. Other than that, the new Consumer Protection Act 2019 advantage is introducing the establishment of a Central Consumer Protection Authority, CCPA, by the central government. The CCPA will be a regulatory authority and shall be empowered to impose penalties, recall goods, cause the withdrawal of services, provide refunds, and investigate matters. It shall only be responsible for protecting the rights of consumers as a class and shall further ensure that no person engaged in unfair trade practices and that no misleading advertisements are made. The Act also provides for establishing an investigation which shall be headed by the Director General who shall be appointed by the central government for conducting investigations as per the order of the CCPA.
So I'm going to talk about any cases related to Malaysian Consumer Protection Act 1999. In 2019, the maximum amount claimable at TTPM was raised from 25,000 ringgit to 50,000 ringgit. Disputing parties must appear in person at the tribunal and cannot be represented by a lawyer, as TTPM was set up to protect consumers. Judgment is likely to be awarded in favor of the claimant if it is a 50-50 case. When claims are made against large businesses, consumers would have to argue the case against formidable opponents, but the tables are turned when dissatisfied customers file claims against tour or travel agency, as most of these firms are small and medium-sized enterprises. Many are micro-businesses, employing only a handful of staff with minimal legal expertise. The only training many travel agents receive is the Travel and Tour Enhancement Course, TTEC, to obtain the certificate needed to renew the tour operating and travel agency businesses license with the Tourism, Arts and Culture Ministry, MOTEC. One of the 5 units in TTEC is Tourism Law and Best Practices, and one of the presentation slides is dedicated to the Consumer Protection Act 1999. This would serve them well in the event of a showdown at TTPM. TTEC is meant to train travel agents to comply with various laws, safeguard their interests with binding contracts, adopt the best practices in the travel industry, ensure the safety and security of tourists and practice responsible tourism, plus briefing by MOTEC and Tourism Malaysia. However, there is one sticking point in the Consumer Protection Act 1999 which ought to be amended, and that is allowing up to 3 years for claims to be lodged. Granted, 3 weeks after a tow may be too short a time to file a complaint, but 3 months is more than enough. That's all from me. Thank you.
In conclusion, the Consumer Protection Act 1999 was amended to ensure that protection is provided to consumers from unethical sellers. The Act has several parts that might assist a consumer in referring to or claiming the essential right under this Act. Consumer will not suffer damages because of cases of fraud, unfairness, and misuse being curtailed. So the Act also gives consumer the opportunity to learn about their right. So nowadays, technology is advanced. It is more advanced, and e-commerce sellers are increasing, such as booking travel agent through online. Therefore, sections that related to e-commerce should be amended so that consumer rights are better protected. As we already know, many consumers are deceived through e-commerce sales. So we believe by having the sections for e-commerce consumer, the seller will be more cautious in dealing with consumer through online. And this also benefit the consumer more because there is a regulation and term in buying the product or service online. So that's all from us. Thank you.